Well, good morning. Today I want to talk a little bit about emotional scenes and why they matter. I'm sure without me even having to explain any more, you know, emotional scenes matter, or emotions in books matter. They're what draw us into the story, they make us relate to the characters, they make the characters feel human, because without emotion, they are boring robots. They also provide opportunities for character growth. So good emotions, bad emotions, they contribute to character growth, which is super important in all stories. And then emotions are really what stays with readers after they put the book down. I'm sure you've reread books. If you've reread books, you probably know that it's the emotions that you come back to, those feelings that just grab you, that you just have to read again. I know that for sure with me. I have some books that I reread consistently, and it's always those emotional tugs that just keep drawing me back to the book. I mean, they have some really amazing world building or amazing plot twists, but it's the emotions that really capture my attention and make me really want to reread those. So when we're writing books, that is something super important to pay attention to, because you want to have the emotions there to keep people reading them, but you also need the emotions to draw them back into the story and to just make the characters feel relatable and real. When it really comes down to it, one of your big goals with emotional scenes, or really just emotions in general in your book, is empathy. Sympathy is amazing in stories. Obviously, you want your reader to be sympathizing with your character, but when you can make them feel something for your character and empathize with your character because they've gone through the same thing, that makes it so much more stronger, and it just ties your character and your reader together in an unbreakable bond. So that is something super important to look into while you're crafting your story. But that said, when you're doing emotions in your book, you don't want to be over the top. I mean, we all know in real life that there are moments when you explode, or when you just have a terrible day and you're just crying and it's horrible. But do those days happen every day? No. For the most part, we have peaks and valleys. So we have moments when it's terrible and the emotions are flying high, but then we also have times where we're just stable, where there's nothing exciting happening and we're just living our life. So when you're writing your stories, every scene should not be, oh, her brother died and now her life is horrible, now her father died and now she's crying again. It gets a little bit melodramatic, so we want to shy away from that sort of over-the-top theater drama and make it real. So obviously there are going to be moments in your stories when things get crazy and when the emotions are flying high, but you want to save those moments for the pivotal times when you really, really need to work on those emotions. I remember a couple years ago in a stagecoach class, my teacher was talking about just dialogue and speaking, and how when you carry on a conversation, how you have just a level, a plain simple level, and then when you get more excited, you are going above that level, but you have to stay at that consistent normal level to make the excited level actually feel like something different. Because if you're always crazy excited and high energy, then high energy for one moment in a special place isn't going to feel high energy, because that's your consistent level. So it's super important to give yourself room to grow. So not every single scene is that high energy moment when everything is going wrong. So the whole book can't just be the character's life is horrible, everything's ruined, and the emotions are just flying high. We need to have some sense of normalcy. And really, if your character is always crying or always having their heart broken or some terrible things happening, it just gets a little bit much. People really want their characters to feel relatable. They want to read a character they relate to, and there aren't very many people in the world that are always going through those really, really, really high emotions. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was just actually writing your emotional characters. So we talked a little bit about the peaks and valleys and what you want to craft in your story, and a lot of that can be done beforehand if you're an outliner, and if not, you can just keep it in mind as you're going. But how do you actually write those emotions into your story? Well, a big component is show versus tell. You do not want to be telling people that your character is sad or that their heart is broken. You want to be showing that. And one really, really helpful tool that I have been using, trust me, this has been sitting at my desk for the last many months, like right by my keyboard, because it is just so invaluable. It's so helpful. So without further ado, the Emotions Thesaurus. This is incredible when it comes down to making your characters emotional without making them feel bland. So I know a lot of authors use this when they're going back and editing, I find it really helpful to do it while I'm drafting because it bugs me when I start using the same word over and over and over, and I need something else to use. So I found this book to be invaluable. I'm sure as you've written, you've realized there tend to be like 5 different words that you tend to use consistently, and usually they're simple and easy. And when you're writing, you do really want different words to come out. You want to have a vocabulary, and you want to show more emotions than just happy, sad. So this book is so helpful when it comes to that. Let me just show you. So what emotion should I go with? I just pulled up all the bad ones. I'm like, hatred, guilt, irritation. Okay, we'll go with love. That is a lot less dark. What I love about this is just that we start by a definition. So she says, deep affection, attachment, or devotion for one another. That's a pretty good definition of love. And then we have the physical signals. We have internal sensations. We have mental responses. Then we have cues of acute or long-term love. We have what it may escalate to. And then that shows different emotions that are actually in the book. And then we have cues of suppressed love. And then she has a writer's tip right at the bottom of each one. And this is just so helpful because we have all the different moments. So as you're writing, you want to be showing, but sometimes you don't know how to express that. So easy ones are her heart was pounding, she was blushing, she was smiling, simple things like that. But when you keep using those, it feels repetitive. So we have all the different options. So it is just so helpful when you're writing to actually have the opportunities to show without always feeling like you're reverting back to the same actions. So let me just give you a couple examples. So we have things like a beaming expression, glowing cheeks, strong eye contact, very little blinking, a yearning look, using names of endearment, sitting together so the legs touch, putting an arm around someone's shoulders, realigning hobbies or interests to match one another's. And then we have things like internal sensations, which are super helpful when you're writing in deep POV. So that's things like a fluttering in the stomach, a racing pulse. And then we have things like mental responses. So euphoria or pleasure at touching and closeness, cues of acute or long-term love are exchanging personal effects like clothing or jewelry, giving gifts, embracing the love interest's friends as their own, sharing finances and possessions. And then that may escalate to peacefulness, satisfaction, desire, adoration, and all of those other emotions listed are emotions that are in here. So when you feel like you've had enough love in your scene, you can move to the next one. And then we have cues of suppressed love. So if it's not working out, then what is going on? You have darting glances, watching from a safe distance, flushed skin. So it's just so helpful to be able to go through this book when you're in a rut and you really just need some other options, some other things to say. So I would very, very, very highly recommend that you get that book. It has just been a world changer for me. She actually has a whole series of these books. I only have 2 of them. Ta-da! But they have been so helpful when crafting my characters and getting into their mindsets. So I would highly recommend going and getting a copy of that. So overall, what's super important with characters and their emotions is just creating that empathy, creating the emotions that draw you in, make the characters feel real, relatable, and then draw the reader to keep reading it, keep coming back to reading it. That is obviously your goal as a writer, to have your readers keep coming back and rereading your books. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If anything stood out to you or you have anything else to add, please drop it in the comments below and I'd love to chat about it there. So remember to click the subscribe button to follow along for more writing tips, more updates. I'll see you then.